What's really interesting is recently I had a discussion with Binyamin Tzedakah. He is the top Samaritan scholar in the world. He's written 108 books, this guy. And he says to me something really interesting, and we'll get back to him hopefully later. But he says to me, do you know what the name means? I said, I know what it means, but you're a Samaritan. What do you think it means, right? And he says to me, it means he was, he is to come. He will be. Hayahoveh, he was, he is, he will be. So the Jews know this and the Samaritans know it. You know where else you find this, Michael? I think you do know. It's in the book of Revelation. So you have the book of Revelation has he was, he is to come, or he will be. He is to come is a translation essentially of Yehieh, he will be. And so you have this in the Jews, the Samaritans, and the New Testament. Now you can't tell me, well, the Jews looked in the book of Revelation, that's where they got it. Obviously they got it from a common source, right? And the Samaritans certainly aren't getting it from the Jews. So where are they all getting this from? So I asked this to Binyamin Tzedakah, how do you know that's what it means? And he said, it's obvious from Exodus 3:14. So he's a second witness.
Okay.
I said that for years. When you read it in Hebrew, Ehyeh, I will be, is the explanation of the name Yehovah. How is it an explanation? Well, this has to do with how Hebrew verbs are structured. So essentially, you take those three forms of the verb, Hayah, Hoveh, Hyeh, you combine them, and you get Yud He Vav He, God's personal name. And that's why he says, he's saying, I will be, has sent me. And then he explains, okay, just so you know, that's just a one-time title for now. But my name for generation to generation, my eternal name is Yehovah. That's his eternal name. That's what Exodus 3:14-15 means. Now, with all that, scholars came along.
Let me ask you. You were speaking with the head scholar of the Samaritans up on Mount Gerizim.
Yeah.
And so he knows what it means. And so what does he say the name is? Is this...
So he says that, I asked him, how do you pronounce it? He said, we don't pronounce it. Instead of pronouncing the name, we say Shema, which is Aramaic for the name. Okay. I said, well, Aramaic, Shema. I say, Aramaic, well, I mean, in the time of Aaron and Moses, Israelites didn't speak Aramaic, and you believe you're the Israelites, or a tribe of Israelites. How did you pronounce it in the time of Aaron and Moses? And he said, we didn't pronounce it in the time of Aaron and Moses. In the time of Aaron and Moses, we called God Hashem. Wait a minute now. 2 Kings 17. Can I pull up? Share this with people?
Yeah. I think this is very important for people to understand the background of the Samaritans. I take my tour groups up to meet the Samaritans, go in the museum, and this is one of the features. Yeshua spoke to the woman at the well, a Samaritan.
Right. And now, look, today there's something like 600 Samaritans. In the time of Yeshua, there were 1 million Samaritans. Right? They were a large area, a large contingent of people who dominated what's today northern Israel, the area of Samaria, the so-called West Bank, which Jews call Judea and Samaria. So 2 Kings 17 describes the exile of the 10 northern tribes. They're taken as captives into another land. And why did the Assyrians do this? Their policy was, it's really hard to control people who are far away from you because they'll rebel. And how do you prevent them from rebelling? You take the people from the city Beit Shan, and you go and you plant them somewhere surrounded by enemies. Well, who are they going to rebel with, right? They're not going to join up with the next town because they don't even speak the language of the next town. They don't have the same religion as the next town. Mm-hmm. It was divide and conquer. That's what the Assyrians did. So the Assyrians took the 10 tribes, scattered them all over what today is Iran and Iraq, and possibly parts of Syria. And in their place, they took people from 5 different regions, which were also in those areas.
And this is all stipulated in
It's described in detail in 2 Kings 17. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let me just read you the key part here, where he says, verse 24. And the king of Assyria, of 2 Kings 17, verse 24, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, meaning in the
replaced them.
Right. Yeah. Why did he do that? Well, because
running their businesses.
Right. We want to be able to tax people, so we can't just have a bunch of empty cities, and we want to have let's be really honest, we want to have human shields. So when the Egyptians invade Assyria, they've got to go through these villages that are garrisoned by people from these 5 cities who are now in Samaria instead of back in Babylon and other places, right? So it has 2 functions there. One is for taxes and one is it's a human shield. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared the Lord. And in Hebrew it says Yehovah. Therefore Yehovah sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the God of the land. Basically what they're saying is...
Now these are pagans that have been moved in.
Oh yeah, pagans from
They
Cuthah,
don't know
Sparvium.
the God of the land, so to speak.
Right, and their thought is, it's a very common pagan thought. You know, pagans... and even if you go, for example, today, and I don't mean this to insult anybody, if you go today to India, they'll say, yeah, all gods are real. We just worship this one particular God, or maybe 2 or 3 gods, right? But they don't deny that Jesus is a God, and that Allah is a God, and that whoever, like I don't even like Buddha's a God. They don't have an issue with that. They just say we just don't worship Buddha. We worship our gods. So that's the way they were thinking is, well, why are these lions attacking us? Why were the lions really attacking them? Well, 1, they were sitting, and 2, the cities had been abandoned for some period of time. And so lions took over the place. I mean, more like in Israel, it was more like, mountain lions, right? It's not African lions, right? Mm-hmm. Big bobcats thing, right? But they're being attacked by these wild beasts. Why? Because they sinned and because the area had been abandoned, right? They're moving into places that maybe nobody lived for a few years, and they're taken over by wild animals. So they say, oh, we know why this is happening. We better worship the God of the land. Who's the God of the land? We don't know. We came into some foreign country called Samaria, called Israel. So what happens? Long story short, the king of Assyria commands that one of the priests of the 10 tribes is sent back to teach these Gentiles how to follow the God of the land. Right. Who is this priest? He's one of the wicked priests that got the 10 tribes exiled in the first place. And we're told earlier in Kings, in 1 Kings 11, we're told that this is the sin of Jeroboam, that the 10 tribes take priests who aren't from Levi, who aren't from Aaron, and they anoint them priests. They're priests in the Catholic sense.
The lowest people.
Well, they're not from the line of Aaron. A biblical priest has to be from the line of Aaron, and they took just anybody who they thought was worthy of being a priest, and they called him priest. So this is one of the priests who ends up teaching the Samaritans how to follow the Torah. Well, there are Samaritans there till this day. Now, in the story here in Kings, is it says in verse 28, it says, then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear Yehovah. Howbeit, every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nations in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Sukkot Benot. What's Sukkot Benot? That was the god they worshipped back in Babylon. Right. In other words, the early Samaritans did something the modern Samaritans say they don't do, and I believe them. Early Samaritans, what they did is they had 2 gods they worshiped. The God of the land, so the lions don't attack us, and their native god from back in their home country, where they came from. So Babylon, they made Sukkot Benot. The men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima.
And this is what
the Samaritan, this top priest, scholar of the Samaritans, I'm not sure if he's a priest, but he's the top scholar of the Samaritans. Benjamin Sadaka said to me, back in the time of Moses, we called God Asham, and today we call him Shema. Now he will tell you and swear in a stack of Bibles and believes that that is the name of the God of Israel, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? However, I got to say this is really suspicious to me that it says here that some of the early Samaritans worshipped a deity called Ashima, and he is telling me, and he still remembers that his ancestors called God Asham. I find it hard to believe that that's a coincidence. Now, the Samaritans in ancient times, he tells me, this Samaritan leader, Benjamin Sadaka, he's a great scholar. He says that we never called God by his actual name, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. We called him Asham. Okay, I believe him. Why do I believe him? Because Josephus Flavius, the Jewish historian in the 1st century, confirms this. He actually confirms about how when this whole story of the Maccabees, which became Hanukkah, is the Jews were rebelling against the Greeks, the Seleucid Greeks. And so the Seleucid Greek governor started persecuting the Jews. And the Samaritans write to the governor and they say, why are we being persecuted? They send this to Antiochus. They say, why are we being persecuted? We're not even Jews. We're just foreigners in this land. Can I read you that? What Josephus writes?
Please do. I think this is very instructional.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're broadcasting to Bible students out there. So the more that you fill in,
you will find out really soon that this is key information.
Right.
Key information, because where does Yahweh come from? Yahweh purportedly comes from the Samaritans. We'll find that out in a few minutes.
Okay,
if we
all
get
right.
to it, hopefully, if we have time. This is Josephus Flavius, Antiquities of the Jews, written in the 1st century, book 12, section 258. So they sent ambassadors, meaning the Samaritans sent ambassadors to Antiochus in an epistle whose contents are these. So we have a letter that the Samaritans sent sometime around 168 or 175 BC, sometime in that period, to Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And by the way, the Seleucid governor, or the Seleucid king, our emperor, his name was Antiochus Epiphanes. What does Epiphanes mean? It means the one who reveals himself. So he claimed to be a god, Antiochus. Right. So they write to Antiochus an epistle whose contents are these. To King Antiochus the god, Epiphanes, meaning the one who reveals himself. A memorial from the Sidonians who live at Shechem, meaning straight off they're saying we're actually not Israelites. We just live here. Our forefathers, upon certain frequent plagues, mentioned in 2 Kings 17, and as following a certain ancient superstition, had a custom of observing that day, which by the Jews is called the Sabbath. In other words, what they're saying is we only worship Shabbat because we were attacked by lions. And it was the Jewish superstition, and this isn't really something we believe in, we're just doing it. Now look, I'm not saying the Samaritans today believe this, but according to Josephus, this is a letter that was sent sometime around 168 BC. And when they had erected a temple at the mountain called Gerizim, though without a name, they offered upon it the proper sacrifices. What does that mean, without a name? So what that means, without a name, is that if you know, it's not ignorance, it's actually very deliberate. The temple in Jerusalem is referred to as the place Jehovah chose to put his name. The place, it's also called the place Jehovah caused his name to dwell. And they're telling us in around 168 or 175 BC, we have a temple, Gerizim, which follows the sacrifices of the Torah, but we don't call the name of the God of Israel upon this temple. Because it's not the place he put his name. They understood that. Give them some credit that they understood that.
Yeah.
Meaning they understood Jerusalem was the place where God put his name forever. Now, upon the just treatments of these wicked Jews, those that manage their affairs, supposing that we were of kin to them, in other words, your governor who thinks we're Jews, doesn't know the difference between Samaritans and Jews, and practice as they do, make us liable to the same accusations, although we are originally Sidonians, as is evident from the public records. Meaning you can check in your own records to see we're foreigners in the land of Israel. We don't come from here. We were brought from some other land. 2 Kings 17. Verse 261 in Josephus here. We therefore beseech thee, our benefactor and savior, referring to the king, to give order to Apollonius, the governor of this part of the country, and to Nicanor, the procurator of your affairs, to give us no disturbance, nor to lay our charge what the Jews are accused for, since we are aliens from their nation and from their customs, right? We're just doing the Sabbath and sacrifice thing because there was a superstition by our ancestors when we were attacked by lions, but we're not Israelites. And then they say, but let our temple, which at present has no name at all, be named the temple of Jupiter Hellenius. Whoa. Wow. So what are they doing here? They figure out, they're not stupid. They realize why the Jews are being persecuted. The king, and so remember what happened at Hanukkah with the Maccabees.
Yeah, they put the statue of Jupiter on the Temple Mount on Jupiter's birthday, December 25th, declaring Jupiter to be God. Well, I mean, my understanding there is the focus was on Apollo, but in any event, what the Greeks are trying to it's the same. It's
they
the same
mix all
name.
These things, right?
Yeah.
Well, so what they're doing back then. The Greeks wanted to wipe out the Jews, but not in the way that other people, not the way the Nazis wanted to wipe out the Jews. What the Nazis wanted to do is kill every last Jew. What the Greeks wanted to do is assimilate the Jews and make them Greeks.
Right.
And so they came along to the Jews and they said, look, stop your Shabbat, stop circumcising your children. You have these things that make you distinct from other nations. We just want you to be Greeks. We want you to be part of our empire. And how will we make you part of our empire? Everyone's the same, so why rebel? We're just all the same, right? This is assimilation, radical assimilation, right? I mean, Jews came to America and we learned to speak English and we follow the laws and we're loyal to the country. We're assimilated in that sense, but we still maintain our own distinctiveness. We keep Shabbat, those who follow the Torah. Here they wanted to wipe out the faith of the Jews by making them become Greeks. And one of the things they said to them, one of the things we find and we talked about this in the Open Door series that we did together years ago. It's a wonderful series, 18 hours of teaching.
Yeah,
and in there,
tremendous. Everyone needs to get the Open Door series.
Absolutely, it's one. Honestly, it's 9 hours of me teaching there, and it's 9 of the best hours of teaching I've ever done. And so in there, I bring the source, which is in Jewish sources that say one of the prohibitions of the Greeks, one of the things the Greeks did to us is they said, you must not speak the name of your God. Now, why would the Greeks care if we speak the name of our God? Because we want everybody just to worship God, right? Just call him Theos. Just call him Kurios. Just call him Lord and God. And then we can all pretend we worship the same God. And after a few generations, who will remember that you guys are distinct? We'll have this big salad that mixes up, and you'll call him God. Well, you can believe in your heart that God is Yehovah. We don't care about that, but don't speak it. Because if you speak it, you make it real. And if you just pretend it's the same name, after a few generations, your descendants will forget and will be one nation. This was the goal of the Greeks. So the Samaritans hear this, and they say, we don't even use God's name. Let's just call him Zeus, which they translate here as Jupiter. Essentially, it's Zeus. Zeus of the Greeks. We don't care. We'll put any name you want in the temple. Just don't persecute us, right? Why are we keeping Shabbat? Because lions attacked us. Now we're being attacked by men, by humans, by Greeks. We want that to stop. It hurts. What are we going to do? We'll just not call the temple by that name, which is really amazing because we have this coin here. Can I show you this coin, Michael?
Oh,
this is a
do.
coin that was uncovered by archaeologists. I was actually able to buy one of these. It's actually not that expensive.
Really?
You can get it for about $200 or $300 if you know where to look. It's a coin that shows the Mount Gerizim. And on top of Mount Gerizim, and what's really cool is archaeologists have excavated. It's a coin from Shechem, from Nablus, and it shows Mount Gerizim. That's what we're seeing here in the middle. And on top is a temple. And there's steps leading up to the temple because Mount Shechem is in the valley and Mount Gerizim is up on the hill. And those steps were discovered by archaeologists. So you have a coin and you find and the temple was found by archaeologists. That's a temple to Jupiter on top of Mount Gerizim. That's on their coins. So the Samaritans started out worshiping the God of Israel and some local deity, but they didn't call the God of Israel by his name, according to their own word and confirmed by Josephus. And then they come along and they're being persecuted. They said, we'll just call him Zeus or Jupiter. We don't care. Just stop hurting us. Stop persecuting us, right? We're not the Israelites that we care that much. Back then at least. I'm sure they care now, right? But and they still don't call him by his name. But so back then they start worshiping this God, and they start calling him Zeus and Jupiter. And hopefully in the second half we'll get back to the name of the creator of the universe and see what this has to do with Yahweh. Because this is key to understanding where we get Yahweh. This is actually, it's when I discovered this, this really was one of the most important discoveries of my life. And I had heard people say this before, and I'm like, you're just guessing. You don't know. Stop your guessing. I want to see evidence. And then I found the smoking gun that I'm going to share in part 2.